Hello, welcome. It's time for another RPG first look. Today we are looking at Agon. So Agon is well, you know what? They have a Kickstarter video. If you want to know about Agon, if you're watching live, you want to know about where you can back it, or you want to learn more, besides listening to me talk about it and doing the usual walk through the PDF and do the preview thing. Agon is a game by John Harper and Sean Nittner, two dear friends of mine, and both excellent designers. It is the second edition of a game that came out in 2006. I played the 2006 version of the game, I think once at GoPlay, and I've watched some people play a playtest version of this game, and I'm super excited about it. It does this thing that indie role-playing games often do, where they pick one thing, in this case, being heroes, and the whole game is about that. I'm excited to take a look at it, but before we do that, before I dig into it, I'm gonna let Evil Hat tell you about it. They have a video. That's what it's for. It's a pretty good video, guys. So you can kind of see, you can figure out kind of what the game is about. So the description in the Kickstarter, of Agon is, I will read it for you. Trials of glory. Far back in the mists of antiquity, a poet sings of great deeds wrought by mighty heroes, of monsters slain and justice restored, of wise counsel and devious strategies, of courage, valor, and daring, defiant of the gods themselves. In Agon, you create and play these heroes, crafting their epic tale into an immortal legend. On their way back home from the war, the heroes have become lost among strange islands populated by mythical creatures, dire beasts, treacherous landscapes, legendary kingdoms, and desperate people, all somehow cursed or abandoned by the cruel power of the capricious gods. It falls to you to seize this opportunity for greatness, to set things right in these lost lands, overcome the trials of gods, monsters, and people, prove the glory of your name, and win your way back home. So, Greek mythology, heroism, role-playing game. I am excited to dig in and see what the game is all about. I have a version of the PDF. It's a pre-release version that the folks at Evil Hat sent me yesterday night. So it is fresh off the presses. We're gonna take a look through the book. We're gonna talk about the art, talk about the mechanisms, and kind of try to get a handle on what Agon is about. So let's do that. Also, before we get into it, you can tell that John has a very specific design. I don't want to say an ethos, but like a design vibe. There is a way that John Harper does design, and you can see it in this game. You could see it in Blades. You could see it in Lady Blackbird. Like there's a thread. And what's interesting is that a lot of the art in this actually reminds me of John's cover design for Fiasco. The original Fiasco. I don't know if you have that RPG kicking around and you take a look at it. It's the John designed the cover of that game, and this reminds me. It's got this kind of like ancient Greek. What's that designer name? Saul Bass kind of thing going on. And right off the bat, like the cover, like the patinaed bronze, right? Like that kind of like copper gone green like color. And it's obviously like, you know, a Spartan or a Greek helmet. So yeah, I like that John's got Sean Nittner on board for this one too, for the second edition. I like seeing Sean's name on the cover there. Sean is in his own right an excellent designer. So I'm interested to see how Sean drifts this game from the original with his influence. So we talked a little bit about what the game is about, right? We watched the video, we listened to the Kickstarter, and we got the little blurb there, and now we're gonna dig in and take a look. So let's take a look at the credits. I think you're gonna see a lot of familiar names. For example, John Harper and Sean Nittner, Jason Morningstar, consulting designer on this game, Allison Arth, Andy Karrison, John LaBeouf Little, Karen Twelves, Nadja Otikor, Strash Asimovic. All of these names are great names, and seeing them on this game is increasing my confidence that it's going to be good. And then edited by Karen Twelves and Fred Hicks and Tom Lommel. It's a good crew. I know all of these people personally, which is a great feeling. It's really cool to be able to look at a game and be like, look at them. Look at them. They're great. You might recognize some names from the additional playtesters as well. This game has made its way around on the internet and in tables, and I've seen bits and pieces of it. And if you go to the Kickstarter, at the very bottom of the Kickstarter, there's a link to some first play or some live play stuff there. It's not all going to be the current version of the game, but there are some looks at the actual play, like character creation and some play of the game at the bottom of the link on the Kickstarter there. If you want to take a look at this and you're watching live in chat, you can just use the !Agon command, and that'll give you a link you can use to follow along. Check it out. So yeah, all right, let's take a look. We're gonna try to answer, as always, we're gonna try to answer those questions. What is the game about? How is the game about it? And what are the players rewarded for doing? So that'll be my goal digging in. And we'll see. And yeah, H30 Foxtrot in chat asks, isn't there already a game called this? This is the second edition of that game. Yeah. So, this is something that I think we've talked about when we talk about small press RPGs. We've talked about this more than once. This idea that if you, for the most part, if you are working at a company that makes role-playing games, and you have, like, I don't know, a legal department and maybe some corporate overlords that you need to attend to, this section of your game tends to be left out, simply because sometimes there is a fear, especially among legal teams and less so among designers, that if we acknowledge the games that inspired us, someone might come looking for money. Then they might say, well, you use this thing from my game in your game, so... And it's nice to see in games like this, and in a lot of small press RPGs, just flat out saying, like, these things are inspired by this stuff. I know that was a big thing for me when I first got into small press games, like being able to look in the back and say, oh, there's a bunch of other games like this, and like these mechanisms came from that game or were inspired by it. And that helps me find other games, which is a big deal. But again, you don't see this in like bigger games, like Dungeons and Dragons doesn't tend to be able to acknowledge their inspirations. So this game has some inspiration from an old game concept called Argonauts from Jonathan Walton, which I think I vaguely remember. The game technique of ask questions and build on the answers, that's coming from Apocalypse World. Epic Wandering Heroes from Troll Babe, right? Which, despite its name, is actually a really good game. Increasing die size to represent potency of traits from Savage Worlds and In a Wicked Age, and then a battle sheet inspired by the range map in 316 Carnage Among the Stars. So those are quite good. In a Wicked Age is a very cool game for doing similar stuff. If you ever want a story focused sort of indie tabletop game that feels like Conan's story, In a Wicked Age is definitely worth checking out. And then obviously you've heard of Apocalypse World. And if you haven't played 316 Carnage Among the Stars and you like Space Marines, lots of good designs there, inspiring this one. So let's see. It looks like it's a relatively short game, which makes sense. It's focused design. We got 100 pages, and it's broken down into thesis, origin, trials, respite, legend, grace, guidance, islands, and then the final compendia. So let's take a look. So I really like this sort of simplified, unified art style throughout. We talked about this when we were talking about Band of Blades. This idea that if you find one or two artists that you really like that kind of reflect the core vibe of the game, or if you're John Harper and you can just do art yourself, I find that it creates a much stronger design than having, 20 or 30 different artists do one piece. I often say that that's something that I've kind of learned from designing Dungeon World, right? That we have 3 or 4 different artists, but I think if I did another game, which eventually I will, I think I want to find just like one artist and stick to it. A lot of the games that I've looked at lately that have a really strong design, they have a sort of single vision for their art and their layout. And I think that's, I don't know, I'm kind of hooked on that. I kind of like that stuff. But again, it helps that you have a polymath in the driver's seat, right? John is able to do both game design and graphic design, which is nice. So yeah, the game, this is the art style you're going to see throughout. It's got this kind of like modern Greek urn textured background kind of thing. I quite like it. It was neat seeing it in motion on the video there. So our first chapter is going to cover Heroes of Legend, which I assume is the characters. We're going to talk about the game, the players, the cycle of play, the dice, and then touchstones, which we'll talk a little bit more about, like inspiration stuff when we get there, because I assume that's what that's about. All right. So what do you got for me, John? So what kind of characters? We talked about this. This is the little blurb that explains the game, right? This was the thing that we saw in the Kickstarter, and I read that out loud. So heroes in Agon are defined by an essential duality, the human and the transcendent. Powerful figures capable of epic feats, but also people who can be hurt, exhausted, and heartbroken. To reflect this, heroes have 2 key resources at their disposal: divine favor and pathos. All right. Okay. So divine favor represents capacity for superhuman achievement. By calling upon the precision of Artemis, the insight of Hecate, the cunning of Hera, and others, a hero may reach beyond their limits. Divine favor is powerful but unreliable. The favor of the gods is not assured. Interesting. Okay, so you have to call on like specific figures, right? So it's not just like I'm going to use my divine favor to be fast. I'm not going to be using my divine favor to be strong. It's like I call upon the mighty thews of Hercules. Interesting. And I'm sure you're already in your mind, because this is how tabletop gamers work. I'm sure you're already thinking like, how could I remake this game to make it about Norse mythology or Hindu mythology? How can I shift this game to be about something else? And I have to tell you, John will take care of us. Because if you're thinking, how could I make this game be like Fast and the Furious? Well, we'll talk about that. We'll get there. So you have your divine favor, and then you have your pathos. Pathos is the inner fire of perseverance that a hero draws upon to endure hardship. So this is like your human nature. This is the thing that makes you like a good human. And pathos runs out, right? You use it. When it burns out, you enter agony and slip closer to your fate. So there's like a delicate balance there. So you empower the heroes with divine favor and pathos. The game highlights the duality of those characters. Passionate people striving for glory against the strife of the world, blessed by the gods to see things right. And honestly, like just reading that, I'm like, oh, I'm doing it myself. I'm like, I wonder, maybe this could be the exalted hack that I want, right? Maybe this could let me play those kinds of superhuman demigods without having to play with the game as is. So Agon is inspired by ancient Greek myths and legends. The action of the game takes place on a mist-shrouded sea, exploring uncharted islands. It is a fantasy world, not a historical one, right? So it builds on the Greek myths, but it's not like a one-to-one, like, cool, when I get to level 20, I can fight, I don't know, Herodotus, I guess. So it's like, yeah, more like Xena or Clash of the Titans or the scenes on Themyscira in Wonder Woman, right? But as I said, if you want to base your characters on current epic heroes like Letty, Dom, and Hobbs from the Fast and the Furious movies, go for it. I do like that John points out here, and I think this is a thing that if you make a historical game, there will always be neckbeard douche canoes who are like, well, the past was sexist, so we're going to be sexist. And it's like, well, I guess if you want to be a neckbeard douche canoe your whole life, you could, but John calls out racism, sexism, and ableism of the past could be confronted or set aside. It's an opportunity for you to hang out and have a fun telling a story, so you could throw it out. Or you could face it, or you could like make it part of dealing with the game. The game itself doesn't demand traditional gender roles or identities for the character. Every type of person can be a hero. Same goes for characters with disabilities. I mean, shit, like Odin was a person with a disability, right? Like this is a thing. Like it's not like it's totally unheard of. So I like that the game calls this out. We talked about it a little bit yesterday when we were looking at Pathfinder. I think the more that games say, yes, it's important to be a good person. Here are some specific ways to be a good person while playing this game, right? Again, you may know how to GM generally, but the game gives you specific advice on how to GM well in this game, just like this kind of call out text does. Here's how to use this game in a way that is going to be good for your table and ways to think about these things. So the game itself is fast-paced, right? It's meant to be relatively simple and constrained, right? The game is built, it's literally like you go to separate islands. It's got this kind of Dogs in the Vineyard vibe in the sense that like there are islands that you can just go to and you do an adventure and you do it in a single session, and that's like an episode of Agon, and then you go to another island and you can do that with the same people, right? Or you can just do the one shot where it's like, we're on our way home from the war. Uh-oh, an island, monsters, we dealt with it. Let's go home. I'm now the glorious one and you have to paddle the boat, right? Like you can do it in this structured way, or you can play it out in a bunch of different adventures, which I think is cool. It's nice having that freedom. The game is fairly simple. Each mechanic can be learned as it comes up. I'm gonna take a look. I'm going to take a look at the character sheet for the game because it's a John Harper game and it's like 95% character sheet, and John makes good sheets. So we're going to take a look at it. And I'm curious to see, especially with fast paced games or like rules light games, I'm always really curious to look at the sheet because I feel like they have to do a lot more work than usual, right? Not just here's a place to write down your stuff, please refer to the book, but like here's some actual information on how to play the game, right? So we'll take a look at that when we're done. So the game takes place revolving around a trial, right? Conflict between the heroes and their opponents. To resolve a conflict, everyone rolls dice together in a contest. The result of the contest determines all the outcomes at once. Which side gets their way, who is best, and who suffers. The result of the contest is final. The situation is resolved and a new circumstance arises, leading to a new trial and contest to overcome. In Agon, you don't linger over things. You face the challenge and move on, win or lose. Using one war resolution gets everyone involved in the action together and keeps the pace of the game very high. So that's cool, right? And it's nice having that called out. Like the game is meant to be like hit a few beats, get it done in a couple of hours, which is quite cool. And I'm curious to see what that looks like. I feel like I've played other games where it's like the whole scene is resolved in one roll. I'm thinking particularly of Rain. I guess the same system that Godlike uses, the ore engine, where you're looking at like success, width, and height. You can get a lot out of a single kind of pool of dice, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how this game organizes that. So Agon is meant to be played with 3 to 6 people, 4 being the ideal number, right? Where it's like one Strife player who presents the islands and trials. Everyone else is a hero player. If somebody gave me an option, if they were like, Adam, you could be a Strife player or a hero player, I would choose Strife every time. You get the cool spiky blonde hair and you get the big sword. And is that not? I mean, I don't want to be a hero. I want to cause strife. The rest of you are hero players. You portray the hero that faces the challenges of the island to earn glory, appease the gods, and make progress toward home. Now, I'm interested because in the original Agon, in 2006 Agon, it was very much a, yes, we're competing with, like, we're all running the race to see who earns the hand of the prince so that we can get married and that our friends can leave the island. But it wasn't just like it felt to me like you're running the race against each other more than anything else, right? Like there was this very aggressive, like, and again with like Greek myth, like we're all on the same side, but I want to be the best at being on this side, right? We're all at war with the Persians, but I want to bring home the most glory for Greek, right? For Greece. So yeah, you want exactly. They want to be the very best. Everyone in Greek myth has the Ash Ketchum problem, where they want to, they want to like compete with each other. And I'm curious to see how much of that got carried over into second edition, because it could get pretty cutthroat. OG Agon, there was a lot of headbutting. So yeah, Strife player and hero players. It sounds like the Strife player is, well, we'll get that. The hero player creates and portrays a hero on their quest for glorious homecoming. Make your hero larger than life, a memorable character worthy of an epic tale. You're going to face danger and overcome strife to appease the gods, competing with your fellow heroes to earn the greatest share of glory and forge your legend. Right. Okay. So now you want to have the greatest glory, but your job is to make your character worthy of the epic tale. A member of a sports team, all working together towards a common goal against opposition, but each of you wants to be the star of the team. It's a good analogy. I like that. And then the Strife player presents the dangerous island to contend with its challenges. You portray the gods, monsters, and people that the heroes encounter and describe the places they visit. So pretty typical like GM role stuff. Strife player is a guide and a referee. You point out interesting and challenging features they come across and adjudicate the contests. You might be a Strife player for one island, hero player the next, or you might be the Strife player for several islands in a row. Okay, cool. So it's meant to, if you play in a longer term, you might have a hero that you are not playing in this session. You're going to be the island guide, the Strife player for this island. And then as they move on, then you might switch. Someone else might take that role. Yeah. And it is cool. It's a small point, but I've noticed a few people are interested in this. There's a couple of little things throughout, but this particularly is interesting. Both the hero player and the Strife player are just called players. It's not game master and players, it's hero players and Strife players. It's small, it's little, but the shift helps, especially in a game where one player is literally like controlling the gods. It's nice to just kind of like flatten that hierarchy a little. Everybody just has different jobs to do. So Agon is played in a number of phases. You have, I think, the engagement role. And then you have your job, and then you go to downtime, I think is that, and you go back to doing the engagement. No, that's not. It's origin, trials, respite, and legend. So you create your hero. You arrive on an island afflicted by strife. There is a contest. Finally, you face a battle, and then you leave an island, and your great deeds and virtues are recorded in the epic tale. And head on, right? And then either you meet your fate or there is a homecoming. That's kind of the end of your character's story. So this game, break out most of your polyhedrals. You use D4s, 6s, 8s, 10s, and 12s. Each player... Are we playing Dogs in the Vineyard, John? Each player needs 1D4, 3D6, 3D8, 2D10, and 1D12. So if your spear is big and crap, it's a spear, D8, and a D4, right? Is that how that goes? I mean, at least we know we're going to need these things. Everybody has a D12 kicking around, and probably a few D8s, but this is the optimal set of what you need. The Strife player should have multiples of each die size to use for foes, as well as bonus dice when the players need them. Key traits of the hero are rated with dice. Oh my God, I was just kidding, but this is how it is. Your hero might have a name of D6, blood and valor of D8. An opponent might have arts and oration rated at 2D6. The bigger the die size, the more powerful the trait. Okay, yeah, so it is like that. Okay. And then touchstones, which is like and again, something that for me is really cool. I love when games put in movies, books, music, whatever, like a bibliography of other media. I will sit down and I'll watch everything or read a bunch of the books I've read. And the only one of these I've ever consumed every single item on the list is Burning Wheel. I would challenge you, if you want a real media consumption challenge, I'd challenge you to take a look at the bibliography in Eclipse Phase and try to absorb even half of it. There's like 200 things on that list, but I love these. They're really helpful. And I think that for me, it really helps me get in the mood. And I love that it's like, of course, the Iliad, the Odyssey, Clash of the Titans, Jason and the Argonauts, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Apotheon, and then Fast and the Furious? Which is like, I feel like there's a buried thesis in this work that says Fast and the Furious is a Greek myth. I'm going to let the game speak for itself, but that's very, I mean, I can, because they're a family, but they're racing to compete at seeing who's the best, right? I love it. I love it. It's great. Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's talk about characters. So we're going to look at creating your hero. So to create your hero, you need to choose a heroic epithet, create a name for your hero, determine your lineage and favored domain, your honored god, and record your divine favor. You also record your hero's style, look, armor, and favored weapon. Finally, you'll establish your starting bonds. You may want to have a copy of the hero sheet to refer to while you read through this section. We'll take a look at that at the end. So when you make your character, you're crafting the story of great heroes memorialized in epic poems. To distinguish yourself in the narrative, you have a heroic epithet, a short, evocative phrase that describes a key feature that boosts your hero in conflict. Perhaps your hero is silver-tongued, pure-hearted, or strong-limbed. Each hero has a unique epithet all their own. Your hero's epithet die begins at D6. Choose from the list or create one. Swift-footed, war leader, lion-hearted, clear-voiced, far-sighted, forge master. Yeah, I like it. So if you can't think of one, there's a list. But if you can, you are welcome to create your own. Dark-mooded. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so you come up with an epithet and write it down, and that's a D6. Your hero's name is a crucial part of who they are. It will live far beyond their mortal life, ringing out in legend. So every contest in the game involves your name die. It's essential to your identity. It starts as D6 and grows in potency. For a list of ancient names, see page 100. Nadja creates her hero, starting with an epithet and a name. Clever-eyed Hagney. Yeah, that's you. We know this, Nadja. And then your lineage is the name of your significant parent, ancestor, or people. You are their scion. You may have a god as an ancestor, making you a demigod. Your lineage follows after your name. Next to your lineage, record the pronouns used for your hero. So let's see. Choose a favorite domain. So Nadja decides that Hagne is a demigod, granddaughter of Athena. She's now clever-eyed Hagne, scion of Athena. Her pronouns are she, her. Since Hagne is descended from the goddess of wisdom, she chooses craft and reason as her favored domain. Okay, all right. So your favorite domain begins at D8. You have to pick one of the four: resolve and spirit, craft and reason, blood and valor, arts and oration. And Staves makes a great point. It's hard mode if you choose a scion. I mean, if this is a Fast and the Furious game, you're gonna have a rough time winning races in a scion. Okay, all right. So you choose your domain and pick one of those things you're good at. So now you have a name, you have an epithet, and you have something your character is particularly good at. And then you choose your honored god and your divine favor. So you're going to choose the primary god from which your hero draws divine favor. It may change during play, but for now you decide who it is. So it's interesting because Nadja, while she is a granddaughter of Athena, her character, Hagne, she chose Artemis as her honored god, right? The great huntress is clever and favors a bow. Her strength is precision, which Hagne may call upon using divine favor. So it's kind of cool where it's like, yeah, grandma is Athena, but Artemis is my shit. This is my chosen god. You get 2 marks of divine favor with your honored god. You can distribute 3 more marks of divine favor among the other gods to indicate the divine favor. Put a slash through it. Let's take a look at the sheet. Unless John, ooh, that's pretty. Hang on. Let me take a look at the sheet as well. And because we might want to take a side by side sort of comparison. I was gonna save it for the end, but ta-da! So I told you, didn't I? I told you John Harper makes the good sheet. It's also extremely John Harper, this character sheet. It is very literally a holy sheet. So I mean, just like the design of this is so good, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and tell you how good of a graphic designer John Harper is. You know, you've seen it. I love the little domain indicators there. Look, the little shield and the owl, and like, this is beautiful. There's a shield here, right? The big shield on the sheet. And then it explains some of the rules. Obviously, we don't have context for this stuff, but mainly, look, it's just like check boxes. So this is where your divine favor is, right? So your epithet, the die size, the name, the die, your lineage and pronouns, scion of blank, pronouns, your honored god, and then these are the gods here, right? Zeus, authority. Well, we'll look at the favor, right? So the next page, here's all of our gods. Again, like another beautiful, like, look, this is going to look so nice in print. So Apollo, god of sun and healing, is his favor is knowledge. Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Obviously, her favor is beauty. Ares, ferocity. Artemis, precision. Athena, wisdom. Demeter, conviction. Hecate, insight. Hera, cunning. Poseidon, fortitude. You gotta have fortitude for being at the bottom of the sea. Hephaestus, god of fire and crafting, ingenuity. Hermes, daring, and Zeus, authority. Now, again, this is one of those things where as you're watching this, you're like, I wonder how I could. I mean, I'll say this, Trist. It doesn't feel to me like a Sailor Moon hack of this game would be too far off. Working together as a team, competing with each other to be the like, it wouldn't be too difficult. You just pick some celestial bodies and anyway. So for this version of the game, this is your selection for the gods. I like that the gods get their full two-page spread. It's nice. And then you do your style for your hero. Oh, here we go. So we have a little example check here. So, okay. All right. So yeah, here we go. If your group wants to use a different pantheon, discuss the gods incorporating your tales and use the blank hero sheet with space to record new gods and strengths. We even get a blank sheet to do this. So you describe what your character looks like, focus on a few key features. So clever-eyed Hagne, scion of Athena, known at a distance by her dark braided hair, hunter's hood, shining bow and ritual dagger, gleaming with the moonlight of Artemis. Hagne sounds dangerous. So once you're done, here we go. Introduce your hero to the other players. Tell them your epithet, name, lineage, and pronouns, the deity you favor, and the features by which they know you. Write the other heroes' names in the bonds section on the hero sheet. Demigod heroes have one bond with each other hero and one bond with their divine ancestor. Mortal heroes record 2 bonds with each hero. Finally, determine the leader of the heroes. This is done with a contest. Oh, that's cool. So instead of being like, well, it seems to me like you have the highest charisma, you're probably in charge. Instead, you fight. You have a contest, pitting the heroes against the crisis created by the Strife Player during the voyage to the first island. The sailors and ship are in danger. The heroes must rally together to overcome the problem. Again, you can feel that introduction to the mechanisms. This is like in Dogs in the Vineyard, where at the beginning of the game, you do your like, what did you learn at weird religious school? Right? You remember that? How at the beginning of the game, everybody does one test during character creation to both teach you the mechanisms and then like learn one more thing about your character. This is kind of the same thing. It's like the prequel version where it introduces you to the characters and to the system by trying out a basic contest, right? To see who's the leader. Yeah. That's cool. Leadership changes during the voyage in the respite phase. Oh, okay. So somebody else becomes the leader than you. All right. Okay. Yeah, I like it. Cool. All right. And then there's some example heroes down here. I mean, Shadowwise Zentropa, War Leader America, and Empty-Handed Palace, they're all like fine. But my money's on Clever-Eyed Hagne. Just get that knife, that moon knife. I'm into it. So what does a contest look like? How do we actually play this game? Character creation, as you can see, pretty damn quick, right? It's only 4 or 5 steps. So what do we do in this game? The action of the game drives towards conflict. Since each island is plagued by strife, the efforts of the heroes will inevitably bring them into confrontation with dangerous opponents. Okay, so we go to the island and something bad is happening, and now we contest it. So when the heroes are tested against a worthy opponent, a contest is triggered. Now, I like here, take note that worthy opponent is bolded. So I'm wondering if that's going to be a game term later on, right? Worthy opponent, worthy opposition, approach, goal, like all of these seem to be like game terms. So I'm interested to see what indicates a worthy opponent for us. The contest might be initiated by the actions of the hero or the efforts of the foe. Either way, resolve which side is victorious and gets what they want. Usually the heroes act together, but sometimes they might split into smaller groups. Procedure is the same. Okay, so the game kind of like takes this approach where you could have a contest with anything, right? As long as the opponent is worthy. So like it's you working to get your ship through a storm. It might be wrestling. It might be a war. It might be a poetry contest. Whatever, right? As long as the opponent is worthy. The one that I think is interesting here as an example is the enchanting song of a siren, right? So you are contesting with the siren to maintain control of yourself or your boats. Yeah, in chat, BM Prager says, I've seen it be a funeral. Right? Everybody giving different eulogies for a dead warrior, right? To see who gives the best eulogy, right? Competition funeral. That's very Greek. Yeah. So generally the Strife player's job is to call on a conflict, to be like, conflict is happening, but the players can call for one as well, or contest. They can say, yeah, us, we want it. We are trying to engage in a contest. When the contest is called, the hero players get to chat and then declare their opposition to the foe by stating their approach and goal. Okay, so this is like intent and task, right? The approach describes the method by which they're contending. So it's like we are going to light up the lighthouse on top of the hill by sneaking past the guards. So this is our approach, right? Or we're going to assault the gates of the lighthouse and break them down with spear and shield. So that's how you're going to do it. And then goal is what you want. We're going to light the lighthouse, right? So that no one else gets abandoned or gets lost on this island. So yeah, again, intent, task, approach, goal. What are you doing? And if you win, what are you going to get? This is a codification of a fairly normal GMing process, right? Where we say what we want, and then we have to ask the players, well, okay, but if you get a 20 or whatever, if you get the DC, what does that mean? What does victory look like for you? So it's built into this game. The Strife player does the same for the opponent, saying, okay, the guards are on the lookout for intruders. They are keen of eye, and their sense of hearing divine. And so these divine guards, they're protecting the sacred lighthouse from ever being lit again, and they're going to use their power. And what they want is to protect it from invaders, right? So that'd be the role. And yeah, you could do just about whatever you want, right? Like this could be a cooking contest, a singing contest, fighting, climbing, whatever. And that's the point of the game, right? Is that it's about doing things that are worthy of earning you glory, right? Having these contests to see who's the best at stuff. And then you choose your domain for the conflict, right? The Strife player determines, and that's good that it lays it out, right? It'll depend on the situation at hand, but this is the 4 things. This is what the game is about, right? When we ask, like, mechanically, how is the game about that? This is a game that is about arts and oration, blood and valor, craft and reason, resolve and spirit. Everything in the game is resolved under one of these 4 subsets of auspice. If you can't pick one, it may be that it's not worthy of a conflict, right? And I think this stuff covers most of what you would expect, right? Music, poetry, dance, storytelling, contests of culture, artistry, and persuasiveness. Wrestling, running, skirmishing, warfare, violence, bravado, all of that stuff is blood and valor. Craft and reason is like debates, right? Scholarship, subterfuge, healing, intrigue, trickery. I like the idea of healing as a conflict against like Hades, right? Where Hades is like, yep, this one's dead. And you're like, not yet, fucker. and you're like bandaging them up and applying, I don't know, ointments, I guess. And then resolve in spirit, strength of the will and soul, including tenacity, inspiration, and mystic arts. Contests of perseverance, contests of passion. Oh my. Have a conversation with your group during session 0 about using safety tools like lines and veils and the X card, because contests of passion may or may not fit best at your table. But man, I would love to play a character with high resolve and spirit. Yeah, exactly. Getting into a smooching contest. I'm feeling it. So the choice of domain depends on the details of the situation, right? Like you can't... The example here is at the funeral fast. Oh, we talked about this, right? At the funeral feast, Marika shouts, "Let us sing laments for the fallen and bear our hearts one to the other. The heroes want to show their king they care more about the prince's death than the queen does." Sounds like a contest of arts and oration against Queen Naya. Yep. So you pick according to like, and I feel like it's the Strife player's job, but it feels like one of those things where you want to listen to the players. If they're like, this sounds like Blood and Valor to me, interrogating why and finding the right contest is the first thing to do before you get into, man, I want to play this game now. This is what happens. All right. So the Strife player rolls before anything else happens. So you establish, okay. So this establishes the target number for the heroes as well as the amount of glory the contest is worth. So it's an opposed roll, but you don't roll at the same time. So the Strife player puts it out on the table and then they contest that stuff. So roll the name and domain dice for the opponent, as well as any bonus dice. You keep the highest single die and add the current Strife level. Strife level starts at +5, but may be reduced to +4 or increased to +6 due to occurrences on the island. Announce the total as the target number for the contest. Okay, so the Strife player rolls 1d10, 2d8 for the Serpent of Nemos and gets 5, 5, 6. Adding the +5 to the single highest die gives you an 11. Okay, so you look at the traits of your competition. So you look at the traits of the competition, roll them all together, and then whatever the highest number of any given die is, you add the current Strife level to it, and then the players will need to contest against that. Okay, all right. And then after the Strife player rolls, they ask, who among you will face this contest? Okay, so the ritualized behaviors here are really quite cool. And I think that this is something that we either don't notice in role-playing games or we don't necessarily like talk about because the design kind of hides them. But like in this case, the game specifically calls out, say these things. Now we have rituals, right? We have these rituals in even games like Dungeons and Dragons. We may not address them. We may not treat them like ritual, but they are, right? Roll initiative is a ritual. It is the moment of announcing escalation and everyone girding their respective loins for battle, right? It's the rolling for initiative in Dungeons and Dragons is the like commando sheathing your sword, putting your guns in your holsters, like gearing up montage, right? We have that shared ritual. I like when games call it out particularly. I think the first game I ever saw that did that was Polaris. Polaris is highly ritualized, but Archipelago has rituals. Fiasco has rituals. Like there is some ritual behavior in just about every role-playing game. But obviously this game, because it's meant to emulate like epic poetry, the ritualized behavior is more upfront, which I think is cool. So the Strife player has to ask, who among you will face this contest? Each hero indicates their participation by speaking their name. Start with the leader and go around the table. On your turn, recite your hero's identity and grab dice as you go. If your epithet applies to the contest, grab that die. Then add your name and domain for the contest when you say your name and lineage. I will face this contest. I am Shadow-Wise Zentropa, scion of Serta. I call in the insight of Hecate to aid me in this trial against the foul serpent of Nemos. Allison grabs 1d6 for Zentropa's epithet. She knows arcane lore about the serpent. 1d6 for her name, 1d8 for her blood and valor domain die, and 1d4 for the insight of Hecate, spending a mark of divine favor. So you may mark pathos. So this is the thing, mark your pathos to roll an additional domain die. You may invoke divine favor by calling in the strength of a god, add 1d4 and spend a mark. If you spend a bond, ask that player to give you a copy of their name die to include in the dice pool. They still get to use their name die for their own roll. Okay, so it's like you step forth and you speak your name and introduce yourself to the conflict. And I like this. This is like a recharacterization moment, right? It's like this is the fellowship, right? This is the and my axe, right? That's what they're doing. Like they've called out who will join Frodo on this quest. Who amongst you is brave enough, right? The Strife Player of Lord of the Rings says, "Who among you will face this contest?" And then Gimli steps up and he says, "Gimli, son of Gloin," and grabs his axe, which I guess is like a backup axe because he broke his first one. But yeah, that's the thing. They all call forth. They step out and say, "I will join you on this quest." So as a hero player, you roll your dice and sum the two highest, not counting d4s, and then add a d4 to them. Which, there you go. That's one thing that like I was wondering about, because adding a d4 to your pool means basically nothing if you use the same structure the Strife Player does. But in this case, the d4 is an add-on. So in this case, Allison rolls a d8, 2d6 for Zentropa. The two highest dice are a 10, adds the 3, and gets a 13. All right. Okay. So there's math here that I don't, because of my brain, understand, but I'm sure it works. So in this case, I guess then Zentropa got a 13, which is higher than the target number of the contest by 2. Okay. All right. 2 types of bonus dice in play. Advantage dice are a way for specific fictional details to impact a contest. The value of a die depends on how well it applies. Explained in detail on 55. Okay. And then Wrath. The vengeful gods may interfere in a contest, adding a bonus die to an opponent's tool. Wrath is tracked by the Strife Player and changes based on the actions of the hero on an island. Ooh. Okay. All right. So if you're running around pissing off Hermes, he might be like, I'm going to mess with this and I'm going to make your opponent super fast. Or like you might be fighting a creature sacred to a particular god who might step in to like, okay, all right, cool. Yeah, or maybe, I mean, Greek heroes have a real long history of pissing off the gods. The gods are also pretty trifling, so they get mad about all kinds of stuff. All right, cool. So we'll figure out how Wrath and Advantage work a little later on. So let's see. So Allison got a 13. The target number was 11. If it is equal to or greater than the target number, you prevail. Your action goes well and you overcome the challenge. The prevailing hero with the highest total is best. I love a role-playing game where you can win. I want to be the best. That's what I want. So currently, Allison with Zentropa is 2 above the target number, right? So if somebody else gets a 14 or a 15, yes, Zentropa still succeeds, but like if you're not first, you last, right? So someone else got more. Now, if you get less than, you suffer. Your action goes awry, or you have to suffer hardship to persevere. If all the heroes suffer, the opponent wins the contest. After the rolls, here we go. So after you roll, you take turns narrating your hero's action and effect on the contest, starting with the heroes who suffer, then the heroes who prevail, then the hero who is best. Use your outcome to guide your narration, including your epithet, pathos, or divine favor as details. The hero sheet has a set of cues to help you add details to your recitation of deeds. Yeah, so this is our recite your deeds. What honeyed words did you use? How did beauty manifest? How were passions stirred or truths attested? And if you suffer, how did you fall short? Did you overreach yourself? Was the opponent too great? Was it cruel fortune? Now keep in mind here, narrative priority, right? Whose job is it to narrate what? Note, the players take turns narrating their hero's action, succeed or fail, right? So you do work collaboratively, but you also describe your own stuff. So this way, you don't get into that position where you're like, my character is known for their strength and fervor, but I failed a strength and fervor roll. I look like a real asshole. in this, the narrative priority is the players describe the player's character's stuff. Yeah, tell us why your character failed. And I try to do that sometimes in D&D too, because I feel like it's easy sometimes in a game to feel like, well, why? Why would I fail? Like the dice just fumbled. My character is heroically strong. Why did I fail this? And then it puts the challenge on the player to be like, yes, I am heroically strong, but during this test of strength, I was distracted because I noticed in the crowd a beautiful young lad of Greece looking at me with brown eyes and sun-kissed skin, and I couldn't focus. My heart betrayed me, right? So you could like, you get to decide how much to embarrass your character based on your own desires and your own idea of the character and what you have in mind. I think that's great. I think that's a cool way to do it. And then the Strife player responds after everybody's done, or responds with the actions of the opponent, either overcoming a hero or being thwarted, depending. Yeah. So you get to explain how you succeed or fail. Also, keep in mind the order of this matters, right? Like it's not just take turns narrating, it's suffering heroes first, heroes who did well, but we save the victory for last because the hero who is best gets to close the book on this conflict. It's important, right? It's an important thing. Again, and it's part of that ritualized play. It's part of that, like, you do things in this order because it matters. Yeah, exactly. The contest always results in glory for the heroes. The prevailing hero with the highest is best and earns glory equal to the target number. Ah, so the more difficult, the more glorious, of course. Yeah, okay. So the highest result is best and earns glory equal to the target number. The other heroes who prevail earn half that much rounded up. Each hero suffering earns 1 glory and may take harm. To break a tie, each hero rolls their name die till a clear winner is established. Ah, okay. All right. So, let's see. The hero players compare their roll to a target number of 11. Nadja has a 10. Oh, Nadja has a 10. So Hagne suffers. She leaps bravely to protect the victim, but is smashed aside by the serpent's bulk. She earns 1 glory. Karen has 12, prevailing and stopping the cultist chanting. The serpent is suddenly snapped out of its trance, gets 6 glory. Allison has an 11, so Zentropa is best. She thrusts her sacred spear through a weak spot in the creature's mouth, wounding it badly enough to drive it off for now. She earns 11 glory. So this is how we turn a single roll into a scene, and you can hammer out a whole bunch of scenes, a bunch of these contests in a single island, because we work together to establish. So basically what we do is we roll all this stuff, kind of like the end of Fiasco, right? Where you take all your dice, you look at all the dice you have, and you say, this is what we've got. Let's all work together to narrate this, not round by round, not turn by turn, but in the end, let's highlight each character like an action sequence in a movie, right? Like what is the thing that defines what your character did? And in the end, and I love it. I'm going to keep coming back to it. I love the ritualized order, because in the end, the person who won, they have all the context. The person who is best gets to use everyone else's narration to prop them up, right? To say, you did that, and you did this, and you two did that, and that's all great, but I win, right? I'm the best, and I do this thing. And if your character is selfish, right? You could be like, yes, but none of you helped me, really. You were all fine distractions, but I'm the true hero. Or if your character is like a big team player, right? If you're Captain America instead of Tony Stark, you can describe yourself as building off of everyone else's action. And actually, now that I think about it, you could do a superhero game without too much trouble with this. I mean, this is a superhero game already. It just happens to be a specifically ritualized ancient Greek superhero game, but that's what it is, right? So if you suffer, you still get your 1 glory, but you might take harm. The Strife player may inflict harm depending on how difficult the foe is, I see, or what kind of foe it is. A perilous foe marks pathos. An epic foe, you have to mark pathos to enter a contest against them. You spend divine favor if you suffer against a mythic foe, and if they're sacred, you spend divine favor to enter a contest against them. Okay, right. So these are both, they're currencies. You have to spend them or you lose them when you don't come out of a fight the way that you want necessarily. All right, okay. So you can spend a bond to ask that character to block harm for you. They say how they defend you, and neither of you suffer the harm. A hero may choose to die in order to prevail in a contest, regardless of their role. Ooh. So self-sacrifice is a thing that you are empowered to do. All right. Okay. A contest cannot be attempted again unless the situation changes in significant ways, different time or place, different approach and domain, or different characters involved. Right. So you might not be able to defeat somebody in a blood and valor contest. So you may instead try to trick them with a craft and reason contest, right? So maybe your the way I might describe this is you can't try again with the exact same approach and goal, but if you change something either fictionally or a different approach, then you can do exactly. Adrastos wins the poetry contest, so you punch him in the face. Right, perfect. Okay. So let's see. By winning a contest, the heroes overcome an obstacle and achieve an immediate goal. But to defeat an opponent once and for all, a hero must engage in battle. A battle is a series of linked contests arranged in 3 phases. Ah, okay. All right. So a battle, which is defeating an opponent forever, like getting through a big thing. You make your opening moves, maneuvering for superior position to seize an advantage in battle. The winner earns 1d10 advantage die, which they may use in battle. So you engage. Then there's the threat. The opponent lashes out, causing terrible harm to the hero, citizens, the island, or the wider world. In this phase, the hero chooses to either clash with the opponent or defend against the threat. The winner of the clash controls the stakes of the finale and the ultimate fate of the opponent. And then third, you go into the finale, a concluding contest to determine the victor. Okay. All right. So the Strife player, during engagement, the Strife player describes the circumstances of the battle and any details that might be used to gain an advantage. The hero players declare how they joined the battle, what maneuver they attempted to gain an edge before they joined. Then we make an engagement roll. Unlike a normal contest, each hero may choose the domain they roll for engagement. Ah, okay. So in a battle, it might be like one player is going to use arts and oration to sing an inspiring song to keep the others fighting, and then another 2 might do blood and valor to fight against the enemy, while a third heals them and engages in tactics with craft and reason. Okay, all right. So you can all call on your own personal best stuff based on what action you're trying to take to seize for advantage. And then the winner of the engagement contest earns a 1d10 advantage die. Okay, all right. So let's see. The heroes enter the legendary labyrinth of the Minotaur. In the darkness of the passages, will they become lost, or will they turn the table and arrange an ambush for the beast? Right. So this is the first. Is engagement? Engagement is a contest, right? Make their opening moves, maneuvering for a superior position. Then you make the engagement. Right. So each of these steps is an engagement. So you say, I'm going to try to earn an advantage by whichever domain, and then you roll, and then the opponent is rolling the name and domain dice for the opponent and doing the +5 or whatever due to the circumstances. Okay, because engagement is just a regular contest with a couple of extra rules. And instead of winning glory from this contest, you get an advantage die for the real. Okay, so it's like a link test, basically. Got it. Okay, all right. And then during the threat phase, this is where you actually fight. The opponent lashes out while the heroes stand in defense or strive to take control. There are 2 contests, and each hero may participate in one or the other. First, the Strife player announces disasters that will happen unless the hero thwarts them. This is great. This is just the John Harper school of GMing put into the game, right? Because if you've ever watched John GM, and I think you can do this if you watch game designers run games, whether their own or other people's games. If you watch John GM, he'll often describe to the players the bad thing that has already happened, waiting for the players to say, wait a second, I'm going to do something about that. Hang on a minute, right? This is a John Harper move made into a game protocol, right? So the Strife player announces the disasters. It's like, this is all of the terrible shit that will already occur, right? If you don't get in here and fix it, the sea will rise and swallow up the island, killing everyone. Poseidon's wrath made manifest forever. The opponent will usually make 2 or 3 disastrous moves, often one against the unnamed citizens, one against the named character, and sometimes one against the heroes of the island itself. Okay, perfect. Then each hero player chooses whether they're going to defend the island or join the contest to clash with the opponent and set terms of the finale. Right, okay. So follow the normal contest procedure. Each hero who prevails can stop one disaster from happening. Right. So if it's like, all right, we are face to face with a terrible storm, right? Poseidon has decided that this island and its people have offended him for the last time, and he is raising a terrible storm to wipe away all of these people. That's right. Yeah. See you later, Atlantis. And so what he's doing is he's going to do this, and the dangers are going to come in the form of terrible winds that are going to tear down the trees. They're going to knock over the villagers' homes, and they are going to, these terrible winds are going to rip through the island and destroy it. There's also the rising tide, right? The water lashing about the base, and that is going to attack the island itself, right? We're going to try to sink the island. So one against the citizens, one against the island. And then if Poseidon was real pissed, he could be like, and a terrible serpent has risen from the sea and is going to attack the leader of the group, right? So then each hero player chooses whether they're going to like defend. So like one person is going to get their, I don't know, mighty bucket of Ares and run down to the shore, and they're going to scoop up the ocean and hurl it back at Poseidon, right? They're gonna bail out and protect the island. Somebody else, they're going to use the mighty power of their song to drive back and drown out the howling wind. And then the rest of the group. And it's interesting because the game says it's best for 3 players, right? Or 4 players, like 1 Strife player and 3 hero players. And then it says usually in the threat there are 2 or 3 disastrous moves. So if all you do is defend and you don't like make a point of fighting the thing, then all you can do is just hold back the danger. But also it means that if you go and you contest the threat, the bad things will come to pass, right? So it's interesting because any hero who prevails may stop 1 disaster from happening. Any remaining disasters come to pass. And I guess if you as the GM, if you want the ending to be a Pyrrhic victory, I guess you want to throw more, like you'd want to do 3 disastrous moves instead of 2. Because then you have to make the players choose whether they fight to win or they fight just not to lose. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. There's a little bit in this game and kind of thinking about playing it. There's a little bit of the same thing that we saw in Miseries and Misfortunes, where I think anyone could play this game. Like anyone with any degree of historical understanding can play this game and have a good time. But I feel like you'd get something really special out of like knowing a bunch about Greek myth, right? Like having context for it. Definitely, I would personally find it more fun. But I think it's interesting. I'd love to see this game played by a bunch of people who have a deep understanding of classical mythology. Because then you know what to call on, right? You know how to get up there and properly describe your character in the traditional mode. I guess this is true of a lot of games with like very specific like backgrounds, right? Like you can enjoy, I'm thinking of Worldwide Wrestling or Dogs in the Vineyard or like any of this sort of game that has like a founding in a specific environment. And it's true of licensed games too. Like if everybody at your table knows about Star Wars, you're going to have a different experience playing a Star Wars game. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So, all right. You attempt to defend, right? You do that first. We start to defend the island, its people, and particularly our heroes from the big scary thing. Then we resolve the contest to clash following the normal contest procedure. If the heroes win, they decide what's at stake for the opponent in the finale. That's right. Yeah. So we do defense, then clash. And during the clash, we may choose what's at stake: death, imprisonment, exile, a change of heart, eternal grief and torment, anything that suits the battle and is within their ability to impose. In addition, the winner of the clash determines the domain of the finale contest. Oh, I see. If the opponent wins the clash, they get to determine their own fate in the finale. They may avoid the full consequence of the battle, even if they lose. Right. Okay. So let's read the example. Thesakira places her hand on the Pillar of Storms and invokes the power of the god to summon a lightning bolt and sink your ship. Her pirates corner Ionestes, that's an I, Ionestes, the priest of Hera, and threaten to force him overboard into the churning water between your ships. With sorrow in his eyes, proud King Vlacus sentences his daughter Kyla to exile and orders the refugees of Ion to return to their broken homes without aid. Right, and then we go into the finale, I presume, the stabbing the Minotaur. Ooh, cool. Look at diagram. So the conclusion of the battle is the finale contest. The winner of this contest is the victor in battle. Their foe is defeated and they are triumphant. Since a battle is often conducted to resolve the strife of an island, the finale determines its destiny. Right, so this is the big final thing, like what happens to this island when we are done. When we finish our game of back-to-back Super Baseball, how does that go? And this is that play mat thing that we were talking about, that's inspired by Carnage Among the Stars. And so this seems pretty familiar. So let's take a closer look at this in a sec. So resolving the finale using a normal contest, and then judge considering both the result of the clash and the finale together. If the heroes lose the finale, the opponent is the victor, and they avoid punishment or trouble from the battle. Strife is ascendant, and the island slips into misery and woe. The heroes have fallen short. Right, so this is the you lose, right? The heroes win the finale, but lost the clash. Strife is beaten back. The island is on a path to recovery, but will not be easy. The heroes are victorious, but their enemy is not brought to account as they wish. The opponent remains a diminished source of trouble for the island and into the future. This is the one where it's like, you win, but maybe Poseidon is still pissed at you, and maybe in the future we're going to deal with Poseidon again, right? And then if you win the finale and won the clash, strife is overcome, the island's destiny is bright, you punch Poseidon in the face and are like, get out of here, and he's like, you know what, you're right, I'm going back to Olympus, screw you guys. Cool. Okay. All right. So it's a granular result, and then using the battle sheet provided in the player's kit, you track progress and indicate which threat contest you choose. Right. Okay. So this is the play mat for like, okay, I am going to defend, so I'll put my little token here, and then we're gonna have two defenders and one person who's gonna clash, and then we see where we move into the finale. Okay. Cool. All right. So to learn the system, let the first battle you try be one of weapons, which is the easiest sort of conflict to understand and adjudicate. Once everybody's familiar with how battles work, be on the lookout for interesting variations, right? So this is like, learn to fight with swords because that is the easiest, clearest one. And then you can get into like rhetorical debate or court trials or building statuary or arcane rituals or whatever, right? Yeah. Okay, all right. Makes sense. Anything in which the two characters are like, two or more sides are like head to head. Yeah. Who can make the best honeyed wine?